Hey guys, and welcome to Let's Play Skies of Arcadia. I'm Nye, and this is Base.
Oh, hi!
We're doing this in a slightly different way than I would normally do. We're recording voiceovers after the fact, so it's not going to be quite as topical as it normally would be.
But that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can live with that. And we get to select Rumble feature, which is kind of cool back when the game first came out.
It didn't matter. It mattered, I think, more for the Dreamcast version, wherein I forget what the device was called, but the little device...
VMU.
The controller. Yeah, the VMU had more to do, like, for rumbling, so it mattered more with that, but...
Well, and also the VMU was telling you where to find certain things, so that rumble actually mattered.
Exactly.
And we may not be as witty as we will be in future episodes, because we've actually seen this particular section go by 3 or 4 times now while we've been trying to make this work. Which is kind of sad.
But we do what we gotta do.
And well, at least we remember half the stuff. Like, for instance, I remember calling this guy an asshole because of his hair.
Good old Alphonse.
Good Alfonso, yes.
I like Alphonse. I think he's funny.
Funny, yes, but he is definitely an asshole. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think we were stopping here for a second because we were talking about concussion shells. That's the problem. We were trying to actually record voiceover when I was actually playing it, and apparently that didn't end up working because of a technical glitch. So there's pauses in here that we can't replicate what we actually said.
That's okay. So nobody knows what we said.
Okay, I might have to lower the sound a little bit because it's getting hard to hear you.
Oh, that's just fine. I'm not saying anything important. My fantastic insights were on the first video we did.
Yeah, I know. We can't remember any of that. And there's Fina just sort of passed out because she just got fired upon. Woohoo. He just fired upon an unarmed girl and some sort of flying ship. I'm sure he feels really happy about himself. Right now this is feeling almost less like a Let's Play and more like MST. You know? Just because I'm watching it go on its own, I'm not controlling it anymore.
But that's okay, though.
Yeah, it's okay. It's gonna be kind of amusing. Yeah, he's gonna be rewarded because he fired on this girl. I mean, you can tell what type of guy he is, really.
Well, I mean, he didn't try to fire on her.
He did too! He gave the order, fire on her, but use concussion cells so you don't kill her.
Well, yeah, that's the point, I mean, she's not dead. I mean, what's the big deal?
Okay, so we're waiting on this particular screen maybe a little bit too long. Like, part of me just wants to go, move faster, even though I know I'm the one who did it. We have air pirates. Kind of like fleas. So here's the air pirates. Notice that they're in this kind of 15th, 16th century galleon in the air, firing on an ironclad.
But it is an old galleon.
Now, you guys will notice something in that screen that just passed that I'm going to bring up in like 14 to 15 episodes from now. You guys won't notice it now. When I bring it up, you'll go back to this episode and you'll go, oh yeah. And here we have the introduction of our main character, Vice, who jumps off a crow's nest and then just flings himself down this grappling line. Absolute badass introduction.
Because he's the boss. He's the boss, that's all.
He totally is. That's exactly what he is. Into 5 enemies, and he just has a smirk on his face, going, yeah, I got this, guys. Especially going, you know, you guys have the best stuff. That's why we attack the Imperial Armada. That's the type of line that should have been in Star Wars. You know? We're rebels, but, you know, the only reason we actually attack you guys is because you guys have the best stuff.
Because of the best stuff.
Here's Vice of the Blue Rogues.
Ike is a great character. I ended up using her through quite a lot of the game, of course, not too spoilery, but any RPG fans could have guessed that there will be multiple characters.
Yeah, here's Aika. And the one comment I gotta make every time we try this is that is one of the few times she'll be able to make a big jump like that and actually land on her feet. Watch it from now on, it gets kind of funny. So Vice has an actual, like, sword. Aika has this boomerang blade thing that's held together by, like, staples. You can especially see it in this frame right here. It's held together by staples. And toss their corpses over the side. Just such a kid-friendly game. So it starts off with a battle. And I'm going to try to time this right, because we were talking about how combat works in here. So over the top there is the spirit meter. I call it the focus bar, because the move you use to fill it up is called focus. Showing you the various things we get to do with the menu before we even start. I have no idea what we're talking about now. So, let's see. We got the attack bar. It's so difficult not being able to actually move it on my own, so I gotta remember where I was. There we go. So we can run, but we're not gonna be doing that very often during this Let's Play. If ever. We can use items. We can actually change our equipment if we need to, and there's, of course, healing items and stuff that we'll get used to. You can guard if you know there's a huge attack on the way in, and you want to just prevent that damage. Doesn't happen often. Basic attack. Super moves actually are really powerful moves that will use amounts of the spirit meter. It's hard to see until I turn the camera here. This uses 7 spirit. We only have 2 of 8 right now. Kind of cool thing is that every turn you'll gain a certain amount of spirit for every person in the battle that's currently, like, up and going. So right now we get 1 spirit per person per turn, which is why we have 2.
Back as well.
And then we have our focus, which actually fills up the spirit meter. It's an extra turn's worth. So if I were to focus, I'd gain 1 for Vice for the turn, 1 for Vice for the focus, and then 1 for Aika. And then magic also uses spirit points, but we don't have any magic to use right now. So we'll just go ahead and basic attack. Eventually. At some point. Again, I have no idea what we were talking about at this point. Oh, okay, we were talking about the colors of the blade. Those are the elements that we're using to attack. Red is like fire, green is like life or jungle or something like that, plants, something like that. Each element has not only a damage effect that it'll do, so green will have priority over, I think it's water, which is blue. So you can actually change the damage you're going to give to an enemy that way. But the element of your blade actually changes what magic experience you get at the end of the battle, and magic experience helps you learn spells. So we can actually flick through from red to green right now. We're going to use green for a little while because I want the spells off of that. The camera does kind of jerk around a lot during battle. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to fix that.
That was fun.
They really liked their camera effects. So we gain some experience. Here's the magic experience. Doesn't last for very long, because we did rank up Aika here. So she learned Sakri, which is our base level healing spell.
Good old green magic.
Yep. So we won the fight. Whee! There's still like 5 of them. And it looks kind of bad for our heroes until you realize that there are heroes. Remember, they're outnumbered like 2.5 to 1, and Vice is the one saying, hand over your ship.
Absolutely. I mean, all pirates would have done that anyway.
Oh, totally. Even if he had just been shot and was dying, he'd still be saying something like that.
You could have one arm missing, like one leg missing, and blind in both eyes. You'd be like, hand it over.
And they'd be like, no, and they just shoot him. But, you know.
Then he just Cutlass Wrath.
More or less. That line, you know you don't want to ever say that line. And that's the most violent part of the game, where Captain Dine shoots the guy in the head. It has a pretty badass line, too. And we paused here, so we're going to show you Captain Dine's weapon actually has... you can see it actually is colored, it is blue on the barrel, so it actually is using an element. So one of the reasons this scene's taking so long is we were talking about how the blades work. Every blade, every weapon is made out of moonstones, at least in part. So the barrel of Diane's weapon, the blade of Vice's weapons, and moonstones react to, like, power stones. That's how they get that color, that's how they get that element. So we were pausing to show you stuff like this.
There are 6 elements to choose from as well.
Mm-hmm. We'll show you that in a second when we get to the next battle and get that magic experience screen back up.
Which I liked, the way that there were 6 elements, but it did make it interesting. It broke it up slightly the way you would normally expect it, with the inclusion of silver magic and that sort of thing.
There's a Sacri Crystal, so the item form of the Sacri spell. Most, if not all, spells actually do have an item version of it. So Skies is kind of a dungeon crawler-ish RPG. You can see in our lower right-hand corner, that's our map, and fills in as we move. And so Alfonso finds us.
You said that before, dungeon crawly. I don't know how much I agree with dungeon crawly. I mean...
Like, did you ever play a game called Evolution back on the Dreamcast?
I did not. I never owned a Dreamcast myself.
Well, when I say dungeon crawly, like, if you compare it to games like, what's a good example? Most of the Final Fantasy series would be a pretty good example, actually, or Pokemon, or just generic RPGs. You do actually go and you'll have a lot of towns you'll be exploring that you'll not have a lot to do in, and then you go into the overworld, and then you'll go around there for a while. Skies always seem to have a lot more dungeons than you would expect out of most of these RPGs. And in most of these dungeons, you would be, like, half the dungeon would be exploring the dungeon, getting that map going, as opposed to this sort of straightforward path.
Yeah, well, dungeon crawlers, so I understand, is where the vast bulk of the game takes place in that sort of thing. But I mean, I guess from what I'm reading here, because I looked it up, it kind of depends. Like, I'm more with the idea that a dungeon crawler is kind of more like a roguelike, but not quite as in depth. But
well, the name would apply.
Most of the game in either, if not one dungeon, then in all kinds of dungeons, but nonstop. Whereas Skies feels much more exploration based for me.
Well, the name applies a lot better to games like Evolution, which actually had randomly generated dungeons that you would actually be exploring. That was a legitimate dungeon crawler. But Skies does still have that feel to it for me, even though it isn't randomly generated. In a lot of things you're doing, it feels like a dungeon of some sort. It feels like you got to explore this, get to here, do that. Even the overworld, in some ways, has that you can't go here until you do this.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, barriers for progression, sure, but...
In some ways, yeah. Okay, so here's the magic experience screen. So what happens is, and we skipped it because it happens automatically, but magic experience, you get a certain amount per character for the fight. So in this case, we got 1 magic experience per character, plus 1 for the battle. That'll happen all the time. And whatever each character used as their elemental choice, that's what you'll get the experience applied for. So both characters use green magic, so we have 1 magic experience, just in general for green, plus 1 for Vice, plus 1 for Aka, both using green. It'll change later on. We might get 2 to 3 magic experience per fight or more. And we passed the first tier for Aka already, so Aka learned her Sacri. After 6 more magic experience for Vice, he'll learn Sacri as well. And you can also see the various colors we have there. So green, blue, red, purple, yellow, and silver. That's for the dungeon crawling. It's the way the map feels to me. How it slowly fills itself in, whereas a lot of other RPGs, you either have a fully filled in map already, or you never get that map because it's so straightforward.
Yeah. I think it's far more RPG than dungeon crawler enough to say that I don't think it's dungeon crawler.
That's a fair statement either way. This little battle
The thing
actually.
kind of about magic is that 4 of the elements are kind of normal: fire, water, air, and there isn't really an earth element. There's electric, but there's not an earth element. Fire kind of is earth, but not so much. Red, I should say. But the other two, the green, which is kind of heal and poison, doesn't really have any counter or uncounter, and the same with silver, which is death magic or time magic. Well, not time magic, really.
It's more like life and death magic.
It's called, I think it's called infinity magic or something like that. I can't remember exactly what they call it, what it is the silver moon represents, but it's like instant death ability, sort of. It's interesting stuff.
That was fun.
And that battle actually showed a lot of cool stuff, especially when you're fighting, people do move around, and players and enemies will actually fight against each other, even when you haven't actually hit the fight button or when it's not showing their turn. Which was a cool answer to games like, say, Final Fantasy, where it's just you're only attacking when you hit the attack button. So it's as if the characters do line up in a line and start throwing shit at each other, but in very carefully specific turns.
It makes things difficult too sometimes. Of course, when you assign a character to attack, generally they'll run forward in the background and jump into the melee, but if you tell them to cast a spell or to focus or defend, they'll slowly back up. But it's interesting because this game has, of course, area of effect abilities that will attack everything, but they also have abilities that are cone effects, and they can really be thrown off or not, depending on whether or not, for example, if you cast a cone attack at one enemy and you expect to hit, the enemy and all of his buddies, and then once the fight starts, all of his buddies scatter.
Yeah. And this will be especially true in the boss fight we'll have in a few minutes. We actually even commented on it during the boss fight, which is why it's been brought up now. There is actually a cone attack there that can really screw with you.
That wasn't so bad.
But the nice thing is, even though they did do this whole run around, do other stuff thing, there goes Vice, he just learned Sacre. Even though they did do this whole, run around thing, every character can reach every other character. You saw Vice do a ranged attack, actually, created like some sort of shockwave off of his sword. Even those exist. So every character can reach any other person.
Oh yeah, everybody has both ranged and melee capabilities. Some characters tend to be better one way or the other. For example, one character will meet not shortly necessarily, but one of the characters we first meet will always be more effective in melee range than he is at range, but
I never really ever noticed that either.
it could always be a weird bias, but I'm fairly certain that's exactly how it worked, is that characters that are closer and more suitable to closer. I have noticed that when they're at range, they'll never crit.
That I didn't notice, but... Well, I noticed that, but I kept on feeling that the characters just ran in when they were at range to get the crit.
Yep, they will only ever crit in melee range. Even ranged characters such as, well, we won't mention necessarily, but
Yeah.
there is a ranged character in the future, and even that character will run forward to accomplish a crit.
So this is the first of several super doors that we get, just these gigantic opening doors. And some of them get quite comical later on in the game. Just these gigantic freaking openings that come out of nowhere. This one kind of makes sense because it's on a ship, even though there's absolutely nothing in this hangar. But this should give you some measure of what Alfonso's like. He's decided to attack his own man to make an excuse for why he lost his ship. No, he does throw him overboard. Like, it's... in the lore of the game, we're actually flying in the sky. This isn't like... Skies of Arcadia refers to the skies. There is no land, really. There's just floating islands in the middle of the sky. As you go further down, the pressure of the air grows to a point where it can just crush these ships. So that guy is actually destined for a really painful death. So this is Vice challenging Alfonso to a fight, and this is Alfonso's response to it.
Awful man, Alfonso. Awful.
Come, Antonio.
Dashing rogue. Well, not much of a rogue, but
He doesn't deserve rogue.
well, he tries really hard. I don't think you're giving a guy enough credit.
I'm not giving him any credit. He's freaking Alfonso. He doesn't deserve credit. So you spend some time trying to figure out what the hell this thing is. And we still have no idea. All we know is it has some really big horns.
I called him a beefalo, and I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a hoved something or that has the gigantic horns coming out of its gigantic shoulders. And it apparently has a cone-shaped head.
That's weird. Ranch dressing for cheesy breadsticks? That's an odd...
So this is the first of the boss fights. And, one thing I wanted to comment on here, and I'm still going to continue to do it, is the music in this section, in every boss fight section. The music actually tells you how you're doing, how you're performing against the fight. This music here is actually the bad fight music. It's the you're losing fight music. Now, the reason why it says that is if you can see Eika's health, she's in the yellow, she's at less than half health, and Vice is at about 2/3 health. So both of them are pretty badly damaged versus a full health boss. So because of this, I'm considered to be losing the fight, so it gives me the really bad fight music. Now, there are some things that will cause an instantaneous bad fight music, things like characters going down, characters being in the red, even if the enemy is in the red as well. Here's that cone attack we were talking about. You can even see the cone, too.
Looks like you got lucky. Didn't hit Eika.
Yeah. I also got lucky that it didn't kill Vice.
Yeah, no, you should heal. That's the heal music.
Yeah, that's the heal music. That's what that is. So here's the first magic spell we cast. So magic spells are interesting because they only use 1 MP no matter what, period. But they use spirit points in order to fund the rest of it. So you can see Eika has 4 MP, so she can cast 4 magic spells. But I can only do it if I have the spirit points available.
Yeah, and that magic points will always stay fairly limited. Even at the end of the game, you won't have a vast amount of spells you can cast before you use magic crystals, which are
we got the magic.
Expensive.
We got the magic droplet earlier, which increases it increases MP by like 1 point.
Increases by 1. Yep.
Yeah. So we were listening to the good, or like the "You're doing fairly well" battle music earlier, until Eika got hit by Thunder Fury. There she goes, and she healed herself again. So as you can see, the heal spell is actually fairly powerful. Even the level 1 heal spell. So we're just fighting back and forth. So this is the normal, you're doing kind of okay fight music.
Which, if I remember correctly, Sacri as a spell scales with, I think...
No. Sacri, the level 1 heal spell, will always only do 500 health.
I was actually going to say, I didn't remember if the spells will scale, or if it's the items that don't scale, or what.
Nope, nothing scales. It's always a dedicated amount until you get the full heal spell.
But,
And this
way,
right...
spells like that are almost always, I mean, with the exception of emergencies like this case, you get enough abilities, super moves, fairly early on in the game where you usually don't need to rely on using magic in combat. But since, of course, you can't spend spirit points out of combat, that's when you want to use magic if you have no other choice.
Yep. Speaking of super moves, that was Vice's level 1 super move. The super move he gets directly off the bat costs 7 spirit points, so it's fairly expensive. Cutlass Fury deals a considerable amount of damage. And this music right here is actually my favorite music in the game. Unfortunately, it just ended. But you're winning this boss fight music. It just has this very cheery, upbeat, we're badasses feel to it.
It's not my favorite music in the game. My favorite music in the game is boss ship battle music, hands down.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty good music, too. So we just got another level up. Next episode, we'll go into the stats and what they actually do. Got some more magic experience. And a moonberry. Moonberries are fairly important, actually. They get used to unlock future super moves, so you definitely want more of them. They start out being fairly rare, and then towards the end of the game, they're actually very easy to find.
Exactly, they become farmable by the end of the game. Enemies will drop them.
But by the time you reach about halfway through the game, you can farm them with no problems.
Mm-hmm. Until then, though, it's pretty important to budget them properly, because some super moves are pretty useless.
Yeah. There's actually certain characters that you don't really want to use Moonberries on, just because their moves just aren't that good, but you would never know this until your second playthrough.
That was actually one of my problems with this game, was that super moves, some of them for some characters, are so vital that you end up, like, that character ends up becoming nothing but basically you just sit them there and then he's a totem that will cast your super move every single turn.
Yeah. But I mean, you don't have to use that strategy, though. You can always not do that. So here's Aka, and we get this little pseudo cutscene, just a drawing out of the camera. It's a very austere looking place. But then again, this is back from the Dreamcast era of RPGs, and in that time, every room you went to was this gigantic furnitureless room. Like, it would be huge, but there would never be anything in it. Their attempt to actually make things look size-wise good, but we didn't have the power in the systems to actually fill them with the correct array of furniture. Oh, that was you replaced Rami the Moon phrase and do not allow trust. If you played through the first time and you don't know much about the game, those phrases really give you a really weird idea of what this game is like. You know, you replace the moon, and you got this just girl sitting here. I wonder how she's actually going to be a moon. As I was saying the first time we played through this, she's a really slight girl. I don't think she'd be a full moon. She'd be a crescent moon at best. There's something you want to wake up to.
Exactly.
So there's Vice's eye patch. It's actually called a sky goggle. It's actually like it's a zoom mechanic. It's almost a binocular.
Yep, it is. That's exactly what it is. It's a spyglass.
Yep. We'll get to use that later. And then we actually, in the first one, it was brought up this crazy hairstyle of Aka's. These just two pigtails sticking straight out that you'll see in just a second. And it's always been my thought that she has like this mini boomerang of hers that she sticks in her hair and twines her hair around in order to keep that shape.
I just think she's channeling Pippi Longstocking.
Could be. So this is one of the first Swashbuckler choices, which is not important, but it's good for 100% completion. You'll be given these choices in this game, and you'll have multiple choices. And there's the Swashbuckler choice. This is the choice that the captain of the Blue Rogues would make. You're an absolute badass who wants to do the best good for everybody, who's trying to show your bravery and courage, but not willing to sacrifice anybody.
In
So,
this case, it's just flirting. It's just getting.
yeah, in this case, you're just being,
dashing rogue.
Yeah. So, for instance, That's a Great Name is the correct Swashbuckler choice for this. That's a Strange Name is the incorrect Swashbuckler choice, and So Where Are You From exactly is just the neutral choice. When you select the great choice, you hear this rising sound that you guys just heard, which says you did it correctly. If you select the bad choice, you hear this type of sound, this really negative sound. It tells you that you didn't do it right. You can see the way Vice responds. He's got this sort of flirtatious, sort of dashing rogue thing going on.
I want you in my quarters kind of voice.
Yeah. And then, as you build up Swashbuckler points, you'll actually gradually gain titles to how awesome a Swashbuckler you are. Your name will be renowned throughout the world. And you actually need a certain amount of Swashbuckler points, which is a hidden value, in order to access the super secret final boss.
And it's funny because if you get all negative points, you start getting some really funny names
like Vice the Limp Fish, Vice the...
Yeah. Vice the Cowardly.
Yeah.
Vice the... Oh, I can't remember many of them. I never got one of them. I was cool. I think my first playthrough I didn't get the super badass title, and I ended up with something like Vice the Explorer King or something.
Well, there's several titles that you get just for doing stuff in the game.
There are 4 titles that are like the best titles, quote unquote, and then there's one super best title that you need to get.
But you have to have all the other 4 titles to get it.
I think it's like Sky Battle King, Exploration King,
Fisher King is one of them.
And then Vice the Wealthy, or Vice the... one where your ship needs to be worth over some X amount of money.
Yeah.
And I forget what the title is, but there's that one as well. That's the easiest one to get.
But it's easily missable, because you have to... There's very specific places where you have to buy certain things to get it.
If I remember correctly, there is a character. Is that what you're referring to? A crew member?
No, it's not. There's to get the Vice the Wealthy, or whatever it is, you have to get these certain specific things for your ship. They're kind of useless add-ons for your ship that don't do anything, but they're considered wealthy, like a good kitchen or heated floor plates, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
there is also a there is a crew member though. There is a crew member that will increase the wealth of your vessel.
Yeah, there is the crew member that will increase the wealth of your vessel, but that person you don't actually need. It's these special these items that you need to get that title, and they're
facilities and floor plating and
chandelier,
chandeliers, and then like soundproofing and stuff like that.
So there are these items that you get. Now there's no point in this game that's a point of no return. You can always go back to every area in the game. It's 100%.
Negative.
Well, not every area.
There's a treasure chest aspect to the final title, wherein you must have found, I think, 90% of all treasures.
And there's certain ones you can miss.
It is possible to permanently miss that.
But there's a couple of other ones that you can't miss any of these pieces to your ship. You can't miss. I think you can get every crew member. I can't think if there's any crew member you can 100% miss. There's a couple things you can't miss. Well, it's not true. There's a couple crew members you can miss if you don't do their prompts correctly.
Isn't a criteria at all. I think you can have a skeleton crew if you want to and still finish everything.
Nope, not for 100% completion. Not for the final boss. You have to have 100%.
I don't remember the crew member quota.
You have to have all of them.
Makes sense, though. It would make sense. I just don't remember it.
But for most areas, there's a way to go back. It may be very, very late in the game. So right now we were exploring. This is the type of big room with nothing in it aspect I was talking about. It's a big cabin. There's only a bed and a dresser. And I was also showing earlier in that previous room, you actually can investigate certain things and get descriptions on certain things.
Well, that is a school of thought you still see. For example, most MMOs still do that, but it's mostly for camera sway, like for having a place for the camera to go. So
you have a place for the camera to go, but a lot of these games, you notice it in Skies a lot, actually, that it removes that wall where the camera would be. So why do you need such a big room? The camera's already outside of the walls of the room.
I believe you can still go first person in rooms like that, but I don't remember.
Well, you can, in which case you still don't need an extra camera sway because you have, that first person.
Just because, okay? Jeez.
Exactly. Oh, and I paused here just because I wanted to be able to show people. Vice's hands and feet are actually on the rungs of this ladder. Please notice that. And any prospective game developers, do this. He actually touches the ladder.
The little things.
Yeah, it's the little things. I mean, unfortunately, they don't always do it with stairs. But I've noticed so many games recently.
Well, that's because this game doesn't have actual stairs. It's just a platform.
Or ramps, yeah.
It's just a ramp. So that makes sense.
So here's Captain Dine again. Being, his stalworthy badass. And this is the second or third time he's told Vice to call him Captain, not Dad? Let's go report to Briggs. This is not Briggs, this is Landis. He's the navigator. And they talk about these sky rifts and how, really strong downdrafts, and if you fly into one, if you're not strong enough, you'll be pushed down into the deep sky where the pressure will crush you like a bug. It doesn't ever happen, and part of me is glad it doesn't happen because that would be really bad for gameplay. But part of me goes...
I disagree. I think it would have been really cool if they let you experience certain parts of the game in that manner.
Yep.
Like trying to fly too high, or trying to fly too low, or trying to fly through a barrier reef or something like that, and just
break stuff apart.
The ship's health is pointless. Like, it is a number that does not need to exist. But it does. Like, a vessel has health, in fact. They even have a weird amount of health, like an arbitrary high amount of health. The only thing they're there for is in a ship battle, but once you're out of a ship battle, your ship is fully repaired.
And we'll
I
see...
think it would have been cool to have, like, a ship maintenance aspect.
And we'll see a lot of that in the coming episodes. But unfortunately, this episode is done. We will see you guys next time.
Bye!